My name's Kristine Morland. I am the founder and proud executive director of a beautiful organization called The More We Love. We create pathways out of homelessness, addiction, human trafficking, and domestic violence through our 24-hour crisis line and our crisis center. I often say, does everybody have a tissue in the room? I think I've got one in my pocket. I often say that I'm an expert in these spaces because I've been an expert my entire life. And it's been a while since I could identify that I had to be an expert in all four of those areas that I described that we create pathways out of. And I just want to take you guys on a journey down the road of the life of a little girl who is now standing in front of you as a woman with a why and on a mission to be as many people's constants as I possibly can and help fight the fight that all of you are in this room for. I was born in California, and at the age of 2, whoop, 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 I've got one in the room. That's great. At the age of 2, my mother came home from work, and her 2 small children were crawling over their father's overdosed body. My father had overdosed on heroin. Thankfully, he didn't pass away, but he was the one responsible for caring for us. And seeing that image was my mom's last straw. She packed us up and moved us to a little town called Preston, Washington. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar, but that's where my grandparents lived. And we occupied the one little single-wide trailer on the corner amongst some big homes. So it's kind of about the story of how one gets lost. And this is why Dave says things like, keep your eyes wide open. Watch for those children. As I told you, my father was a heroin addict, so my mom was very succumbed to the lifestyle as well. And when she moved us up to Preston, Washington, it was her duty to make sure that she could keep a roof over our heads. And so she made some decisions that not a lot of women do, or maybe a lot of women do, but those decisions put me in a lot of vulnerable situations. She chose to sell drugs for the biker gangs, which brought men in and out of my home. I remember when I was 5 years old chasing out the first one who had jumped through my living room window, screaming at my mom, "You're not going to get away." That's when I think I found out that I had no fear. I was the one to get him out. I didn't even have to make the call. That's pretty admirable of a 5-year-old little girl, right? I found my secret sauce. It was my voice. However, when your mom works 3 jobs, you're left to the demise of your neighbors. And thankfully for me, the first neighbor who stepped in was an incredibly beautiful woman named Nancy. She was heavily addicted to alcohol and drugs. So during her time and her fight through her addiction, she fought to care for me. She would pick me up at the bus stop, half drunk. Most of the time I was walking her home. Sometimes she wasn't there at all. And then I would be waiting for whoever was in that door. Sometimes she'd pass me back to the other neighbor who was running a brothel on the other side. All the while, I was just waiting for somebody to notice that my mom wasn't home and I was being passed back and forth. And nobody was paying attention. Not a soul. At 11 years old, Nancy shot and killed herself. And I was even more lonely and left to the demise of my neighbors. And it just kept going. And it didn't feel great. Fast forward a little bit, and there was this breath in the room because we were going to move out of Preston. And we were going to move to Snoqualmie. I don't know if anybody's from the valley, but that is not moving on up, right? Like, not even a little bit. That is, quite frankly, just parallel living, if you will. I went from one impoverished spot to the other. And my mother was at work again, and I was 16, and there was a knock at my front door. And I was alone, and I went and I answered, and there was a man standing there, and he had a beanie on his head, and he had long hair, and he introduced himself as Mark O'Connell, and I looked and I said, "No," and I slammed the door in his face. And that was my father, the very first time I had met him. He just got out of prison for committing murder, and so my image of what I knew to be true of an individual who was supposed to love me was incredibly terrifying. He's also the man who left me to all of the harm I encountered when I was a little girl. Yet again, forgotten. I wanted nothing to do with him. You fast forward a little bit more, and as children do, they become to be their parents, right? We only do what we know to be true, and my mom was out selling drugs and hanging out with the biker gangs. And I put two and two together that somehow she was still keeping a roof over my head, but we were always in these desperate measures, so I thought, let me step in, let me help. As Dave and Jim know, that's what I do best. Let me help, let me figure it out, right? Let me do this. And so what did I do? I started selling drugs. This little girl, this little white girl from Snoqualmie, would drive her butt all the way up to Sprague Avenue on the hilltop in Tacoma at 16 years old, 17 years old, and I was selling drugs for gang members that were in their 20s and 30s and doing unthinkable things. And I was going back, and I was really good at it, I thought. It was the first time I thought I had been noticed. And it was horrible, because I owed everybody everything. Then I got in my addiction, and it got messy. And at 18 years old, I had gotten in a vehicle with a young woman who was delivering Domino's pizzas. And she was also delivering much more. She was dealing drugs on the side as well. And I got in her passenger seat, and I didn't know what she had done that night. She made one false turn, didn't look up, and didn't realize the car was barreling towards us, and we got hit by a drunk driver. And that put me on my feet. Well, it took me off my feet for almost a year where I didn't walk, and I had to make another big decision in my life. What was I gonna do? I was 18, I was broken, I was tired, and nobody was watching. So I answered an ad in a little newspaper to get my job, and at that time it was a desk job at a mortgage company. Look at me, look how bright, look how fancy, look at all these people, right? BMWs, Mercedes, money. I thought I did it. Like, this is great. And I was just answering phones. I was just the receptionist. I was not anything special. But it allowed me to buy a car. I could start living, right? I was like, yes. And so I bought myself a shiny car. I put all my shiny, bright friends in my car, and I drove into Seattle. I was 20. I just turned 20, and I was so proud of myself. I got my apartment. And I am down on 3rd Avenue, and I'm at a stoplight with my shiny, flashy friends in my car, and I turn over and look, and there's my father again. And this time, he's flying a sign that's asking for help. And let me tell you what that felt like. Every emotion, every feeling came speeding in my mind. I wanted to jump out of that car. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to hold him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But the one thing I wanted to make sure is that nobody knew. That not a single person, especially my shiny, bright friends in my car, did not know that that man was my father. Let alone what he let happen to me, let alone what he did, none of it. So I went home, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. But it was strange. I wasn't thinking about what was in here, the harm, that feeling. I was just thinking, I have to do something about this. I have to stop this, because this doesn't feel right. I just got to stop it. And if I just do something to stop it, I won't feel this again. And what I didn't realize is that was guilt and shame. It was buried inside me. I felt guilty because he was on that sidewalk, and I felt shameful because that was my reality. And so quickly I had found out that, all these skill sets that I had learned from my family, like selling drugs and then turning into doing mortgages, I was just really good at convincing people and selling things. And so I started doing what was my catalyst was coat drives. And so I'd go throughout these mortgage companies, and I would tell people, really kind of shame them, guilt them into, there's cold people out on the streets, never identifying it was my father, and you have a coat, so I'm going to need that, please. And eventually, a couple years of this kind of chaos, I started filling these big U-Haul trucks. Like, I was on a mission to feel better, right? And my soul, just one more coat would make that all go away. And so, I did one more coat, but like God does, he does the most unimaginable things, and he places us in places that change our lives forever. And that one more coat it changed my life forever. I put it in a U-Haul truck, and I drove down to the Union Gospel Mission, as I had for 3 years in a row, and the president of the mission had something pulled on his heart that day, knowing this U-Haul was going to pull up, and he was like, I'm not going to let that woman go. So Jeff Lilly, I don't know if anybody knows him, but he changed my life forever. At the time, he was the president of the mission. He comes running out as I'm trying to drop it as fast as possible and run this way. And he says, ma'am, you're not going to do this today. And I was like, what in the world is he talking about? Yeah, I am. I'm dropping these coats off. You're going to take them, and I'm going to go. And he says, yeah, but also tonight we have the search and rescue van, this one van. You guys, this is 26 years ago, that goes out on these streets of Seattle. And it serves our homeless community. And we're going to take these coats, and we're going to put them on the van, and you're going to go give them out. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not. No, I'm not, right? Because we know who's out there. I'm also a people pleaser. A couple of my employees are in the room. You guys are going to figure that out about me real quick. Like, this is what I do, is I want to make sure people are happy. And so I said, fine, under my breath, fine, I'll just go do it. And when he told me what the hours were, it was 8 p.m. until about, 12 a.m. too. I thought, okay, it's dark, nobody's going to see me. It's fine. There's no way I'm going to find Mark out there. So I got in the van. I literally just got in the van. No idea where I was going. And this is what God did with that one little coat. That first drive that I took on the streets of Seattle, they drove me up under the jungle. They open up the doors and all these, sandwiches and stuff, and we start to serve, and I just follow the process. Okay, here you go. But I'm hearing a whimper, and I'm like, there's no way. I'm just hearing this. There's something there, right? And you can't see. If you have been under the jungle, it's under the I-5. It runs, and there's just massive amounts of tents and homeless people. It's been going on for way too long, and there was a whimper. And I kept trying to figure out where it was. Remember that 5-year-old little girl who had no fear? I didn't care where I was going to find that whimper, and it was dark. And I found a tent, and I heard it louder. It's hard to tell this story. It's like the sheer violence, right? And I can't get the images out of my head. And I just said, are you okay? Are you in there? Hey, friend, are you there? That's how I usually ask for people. Are you friend? Hey, friend, I need you. And I unzipped the tent, and there is a naked woman in there that is bruised and beaten. And I did not know what to do, right? But I had been part of that world for so long. So you just don't think, and you do. And we wrapped her in a blanket, and I told the mission there's got to be somewhere we could take her. We quickly found out there was nowhere, so I said, I'll just get her a hotel room that night. And I'm a 21-year-old girl, the first night going up in the jungle. We bring a woman out, and I put her in my personal vehicle, and I drove her to a hotel. And I put her in the bathtub, and I sat with her, and I saw bruises from her knees to her stomach. And I still know her to this day, and she's thriving. She's doing great. Her name's Michelle. That night changed my life forever. I began to go out. Sorry, you guys. I told Jim I was going to say an extra little thing today, and I did, because I think it's important to remember the people who change our lives, and Michelle did that for me. I gave my life to search and rescue for 10 years. Every Tuesday night I would serve on those vans, and I quickly realized the intersection between homelessness, trafficking, and drugs. Every night I stepped out, I found vulnerable women and children, absolutely broken. I was a mortgage loan officer. The only thing I began to do was take them off the streets, connect a resource, go find a human that could possibly love on them, and then do my day job, and then do it at night. And that was called the Moreland Project. So I started that first organization back in 2015. My premise was to get as many constants on the street as possible so that when there was a Michelle, somebody could open that tent and somebody was there to serve them. I had an incredible career. I was really passionate about the mortgage business, but I was so much more passionate about the humans that I got to serve. And in 2018, I got a phone call. I haven't gotten a timer yet, so I'm going to tell you this little bit. These moments that change you forever, right? And you realize the path that God has for you. In 2018, I got a phone call from a nurse, and she had been out on search and rescue with me. And this was about 6 months before when I had met her. Her daughter was missing on the streets of Seattle. And so I took her out on the streets, and we ended up finding her daughter. And through that, she thought somehow I was just this person that could do these things, right? That's not me. It's all him. It had nothing to do with me. But fast forward 6 months after finding her daughter, there was another situation, and she thought, I'm going to call Kristine. She knows what to do. And so she calls me, and she says, Kristine, there's this young boy living in this apartment in Renton, and he's caring for his mom. I can't look at you, Dave. I always say that to him, but and he's caring for his mom, and she's dying of cancer. They fled from Las Vegas. There's a lot going on, but if you could just go there and just check on this woman and this little boy. And I said, no, I don't do that. I do the streets. They're in a home. They've got people. You're their people. You do that. I'm going to do this. And she kept calling. And then remember back where I was the people pleaser. And so I was like, okay, I'll go do this one. I'll do this one. And so on a Sunday morning, I drove to Renton, and I got to this apartment complex, and she's on the 3rd floor, and I go up and I'm knocking on the door and I hear nothing, and I'm like, okay, good. I did my job. I can call her. I can let her know I'm good. I don't have to do this anymore. And then I hear the whimper. And when you hear it the first time, when you hear it again, right? So I waited, and it got a little bit louder, and I knew she was at the door, and I said, could you just move a little to the side? She wasn't making it, and so I kicked it in a little bit. I had done this a little bit more, so I was kind of getting better at that too. And there was a woman there who was on life support, who was clearly very ill. I walked into the apartment, and it was covered in moving boxes. Not one of them was open. There was a hospital bed, some oxygen. I helped her get back up into it. I crawled in the bed with her, and I just laid there and tried to listen to what was next. And she explained to me that she was dying of cancer, and she had a little boy, and he was about to be home. And I'm going, what did I get myself into? And the next thing I know, the door opened, and in walks an 11-year-old little boy whose responsibility was to care for this woman, his mother. I promised her that I would do everything that I could to protect her and her young son, Devonte. What I didn't know was that 9 days after meeting her, she would die in my arms, and I would then be the only sole caretaker for this young boy. When I quickly tried to figure out what to do, I found family in Vegas. And the reason why she fled was because those were the family that were dropping him off at group homes, that were going to leave him vulnerable to be the pimp or the John that could turn into what we are all fighting against. I had this pull on my heart that I had to keep him. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know if that meant to find the right family. I didn't know. But at that time, I was also in a very hard marriage. I was married to an alcoholic. I was living in my own world. And this little boy shows up. And there, my life was saved again. He taught me that I was strong and that I was always here to serve people. So I filed for divorce. I adopted this little man. I quit my mortgage job. I sold everything. And I started the More We Love. That is this beautiful organization we get to work at today. My idea was to start the More We Love just so that we could put more hands and feet on the street. God's idea was very different. What He has prepared me for in this world is my responsibility to give back to those that I get to serve. I deeply believe that women and children and men deserve so much more from us as a community when they're subjected to such horrible circumstances. I deserved so much more as a little girl. Today, I run a 24-hour, 7 days a week crisis line so that nobody is never not watching. So that when that call comes through, whether it's New Year's Eve evening, from a police officer who has a young woman who was trafficked by her husband with a 9-year-old boy abandoned in a tent, I could say, you know what? We're here. I'll be there constant. I'll show up. Our crisis center serves 22-bed shelter for women and children escaping human trafficking, domestic violence, addiction, and homelessness. I do this work because I stand before you knowing deeply that it is possible to do anything, even when you come from the harshest of circumstances. There is no way in this world that every woman, this is where it gets me, that I encounter doesn't deserve exactly this moment. Dave, you say, tell your story. It matters. I stand up here and I do the work every day so that these women can tell their story. I do not believe in keeping women and children in our system. I believe our system is broken. I believe it's harming our people. I believe this is our system. The people in this room, this is our system. This is our community. This is the action. This is what you can do. I started The More We Love based on action. I put my hands and feet on the street. I know the reality of what is under those overpasses or under in the tents. I served as a advisor. I serve as an advisor in a lot of political spaces, and I served as an advisor to Councilmember Kathy Moore when she was working on the soap order where to stay out of areas of prostitution up on Aurora. And people were really disheartened that I put myself in that position to say, yes, we need a soap order. We need to place a place where we can say, you cannot prostitute women and children here. You may not do it. But what I really was asking for was a place of diversion, a place that we could access the women who needed our resources, a place that an officer could go in and say, I see you. I want to help you. I want to get you to the right FBI agents so that we can stop and help you. Our organization is built on the backbone of community. Did you guys hear the introduction? I'm a human helping humans. I do not do it right. I know that, and I'm glad for that because every day I learn, and I learn from the people that I get to serve. But our community steps in ways that bridges gaps for us every single day, and it is unbelievable to watch because people do believe the same thing I believe, that these women and children deserve so much more. Today, after I'm done here, I get to help a young woman get a vehicle so she can get her 2 kids back. We work with extraordinary, strong, brilliant, brave women and children and men every day. And so today, I'm one of them. I work on myself every day. But standing before you, being able to tell my story, being able to share the work, that's healing, right? And if I don't step into this space as a healed woman to be able to serve the women and children I have, then I'm doing a grave disservice to the people I support. So thank you for being part of my healing community and letting me talk to you today. It really matters. My saying is to be somebody's constant. And that could look like many things to many people, but today, my ask of you is to do that. Stand in a space and be somebody's constant because the ripple effect is real. It is really real. When somebody feels seen, loved, heard, they can receive you being their constant. And I promise you, it will be the best relationship you've ever had. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for listening to me today and for believing in this work.
Hope, health, and healing. Compassion Washington.